Well, good evening. Good evening, everyone. As you mentioned, I'm one of three best men. This is Adam Fackler, Tom Bernstein, and my name is Jamie Heffelfinger, and I am Marty's best friend. I would first like to thank Marty and Sarah for throwing the very best après-ski party I've ever been to. And I'd also especially like to thank Sarah for planning the wedding that Marty's been dreaming about since he was a little boy. Marty's the kind of guy who can make a first impression 3 or 4 times as someone gets to know him. Depending upon the setting and event, Marty can introduce himself as Marty, the corporate jet takes off at 7 a.m. Finscraft, or he can introduce himself as Marty, the one-man party, or as a river rafting guide in this great state dubbed him Wayne. Corporate Marty is the epitome of a type A personality. He is punctual, competitive, adventurous, well-planned, and disapproving of whomever does not share his views or his sense of timing. He can apply his strengths to work, helping and planning a wedding, or driving from New York to Pennsylvania in about 15 minutes. Several years ago, back when Corporate Marty hadn't yet discovered luxury ultra slim fit shirts and was relegated to the corporate rental car and not the corporate jet, several of us headed to upstate New York for a weekend. And Marty hitched a ride with a friend of ours he had not yet met. Her name's Jen. Excuse me. Her name's Jen. Jen didn't know Marty, so she spent the first couple minutes of the ride trying to learn more about her travel companion. Before they made it to the George Washington Bridge, Jen had learned that he was pursuing an exciting career insuring the world against life's perils, and his interests included and seemed limited to the Wall Street Journal and golf. She quickly also learned that Marty thought she was a terrible driver. Because again, before they reached the George Washington Bridge, he offered to drive her car so she could relax for the balance of the drive. Once they reached upstate New York, Marty quickly made a beeline from the car to the bathroom, much like Clark Kent, finding the nearest phone booth to inconspicuously change from his standard issue Oxford shirt and chino pants into Marty Party. His uniform consisted of his ski onesie, his slippers that he's been wearing all weekend, a mullet wig, and aviators. He then found his go-to beverage, which was a bottle of red wine, and proceeded to start a dance party. Jen, not recognizing Marty, ran up to me and asked who this really cool guy was who had just started a dance party and who she thought was awesome. The look on her face when I explained that it was the same golfer with the Wall Street Journal subscription is a look I will never forget. Wayne, on the other hand, is a guy I think we wish we could all forget. He is the amplification of all of Marty's more intense qualities and with none of the humor and even less patience. He typically appears after Marty's been burning the candle from both ends, although I have to admit, since Sarah's been in the picture, Marty's been gone. I'm sorry, Wayne's been gone. Marty's here. That changes the story a little bit, doesn't it? So, as I mentioned, Marty is a guy who you can meet many times. And over our 14-year friendship, I can tell you I've met most of Marty's personalities. And here are just a couple takeaways that I've learned about Marty over the last couple years. If you need a friend to play basketball with, Marty's not your man. But if you need someone to play an equipment-intensive sport, he is your guy. He excels at hockey, skiing, golf, and I just learned last night he's even better at helicopter golf, according to his dad. I didn't even know that sport existed. If you need a friend on a powder day, Marty's not your guy. If you're running late to a train, a meeting, a flight, or Jim's Steakhouse in Philly right before it closes at 2 a.m., Marty is your guy, because he's going to get you there as quickly as possible. If you need a roommate that may assault your fiance with a hockey stick as she breaks into your apartment at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night, Marty is definitely your guy. If you need a friend to join you on an impulsive skydiving trip with less than 24 hours notice, Marty is your guy. If you need a friend to close out your bar tab at 3 a.m. because you've mistakenly started a fight with a guy who looks like the middle linebacker for the New York Giants, Marty's your guy. And not only will that, he'll hustle outside to make sure he doesn't beat you up. If you need a friend to plan a life-threatening vacation like skydiving, bungee jumping, backcountry skiing, or most recently, whitewater rafting, Marty is definitely your guy. And I think most importantly, if you need a friend who makes you forget that I'll start that over. If you need a friend who makes you forget that he's not family, Marty is definitely your guy. And I think the last thing I want to leave you with is that, and it's more of a question, is that did anyone think that Marty was ever going to get married? And it's not because Marty is not able to, or no one would ever marry Marty. It's that we didn't think that Marty would ever be able to find a woman who would meet his immeasurable standards. And obviously that changed when Marty met Sarah. Marty has been, I think, planning this wedding in his head since I said he was a little boy. And the one thing that was missing was clearly Sarah. And with that, tonight's complete, and so is the rest of your life. So with that, I'll pass it along to Adam.
Hi. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Adam Fackler, and I am Marty Finsgraf's best friend. As I was trying to come up with what I was going to say tonight, which has been a real dream, by the way, because we know Marty won't critique this at all. I came across a reading I thought captured the essence of Marty. I hoped I might take this opportunity to share an adapted reading from 1 Corinthians. Marty is patient. Marty is kind, at least a couple times a year. He is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. That would be very un-Canadian. Marty does not insist on his own way. I mean, he'll just do it, but he doesn't insist. He is not irritable or resentful. Wayne is, but Marty isn't. He does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth, unless the wrongdoing is funny. Marty bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things with wine. I suspect Marty has played a unique role in all of our lives and made a number of very different first impressions. What I doubt is that anybody's first impression was, seems like a nice enough guy. Or Marty, yeah, that's a good no-frills meat and potato type of man right there. The whole understated fly below the radar thing has never really fit. I think above all else, having Marty in my life has added a certain level of intensity, if you will. Kind of like the pyrotechnics at a Kiss concert, or wasabi on sushi, or Elton John's sequin jacket. Now, I'm not saying that Marty is the type of guy who jumps into fountains fully clothed, or regularly calls his friends' parents at 3 a.m. to talk. Or frequently called the Chinese restaurants in Lewisburg, not to order food, but to practice his Mandarin. But let's just say it could happen. Marty has not only enhanced my life, but as he often reminds me, he has made me a better person. Over the years, I've learned a number of things from Marty. Marty's taught me a lot about driving. I've learned that traffic signs are more guidelines than laws, and that it's perfectly acceptable to downshift into fourth gear if you have more than 100 feet before a stop sign. Turns out the speed thing pertains to all manners of movement. I've learned that those of us who are a little more deliberate or measured interactions can be, to put it lightly, frustrating. I've also learned a lot about men's fashion. which I suppose isn't entirely surprising since Marty hails from the hotbed of fashion, New Jersey. After college, I thought Marty was just being nice when he would say things like, "Don't worry about bringing a shirt. You can just borrow one of mine when you get here." Turns out I was just simply unaware that any acceptable wardrobe is one that exclusively draws from Brooks Brothers, J. Crew, or Barney's. Since those days, I've also learned that tighter is cooler, crew neck undershirts are apparently not cool, and pastels on dudes are not only acceptable, but even encouraged. While I've made my strides, I still haven't been able to keep up with all of the latest trends like Marty. At my own wedding, Marty wore a nice suit with the legs fashionably safety pinned to the appropriate length. Another time, Marty rocked a Miami Vice theme for Halloween. The curious thing was that the entire outfit came straight out of his closet. Besides taking his shirt down an extra button, there really wasn't a discernible difference from the previous night. Marty's also taught me that the only muscle women care about is, naturally, the calf muscle. If all of Marty's muscles were as defined as his calves, we could have made a movie called Magic Marty. I've also learned that dinner can be a competition. One time, Marty called the waiter over to our table and asked for a glass of wine that, quote unquote, cost way more than Ross's scotch. When the waiter left, Marty proudly proclaimed that he had won dinner. Now, what I don't want to get lost in some of these teachable moments is Marty is also the guy who, the very same night that he won dinner, spent a couple of hours listening and giving advice to his buddies. Marty is the guy who for years bought way more than his fair share of rounds at the bar when I didn't have the money to keep up, and to this day has not acknowledged it. Marty is the guy who goes out of his way to organize events or find excuses to bring his friends together. And Marty is the guy who, without a shadow of a doubt, would be there if we ever needed him. So at the end of the day, Marty has taught me about generosity, friendship, living, and to never settle for drinking from a glass when you can drink from the bottle. Now, Sarah, let me start with the obvious. And I think I speak for everyone when I say you are an absolute saint for going through with this. More than that, though, I don't think it's a coincidence that I've noticed a contentedness in Marty that I had never seen before you entered the scene. In my mind, there isn't a better tribute to the person you are or the friend you are to Marty. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tom Bernstein.
Thanks. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tom Bernstein. I date back to elementary school, so that definitively makes me Marty's best friend. I'd like to real quick ask a couple people to stand. Trevor and Jenny Tarpley, do you mind standing up? So everybody in the room has one responsibility tonight, two. The first is to tear up the dance floor. The second is to meet this couple here. It was their Newport wedding where Marty and Sarah met. So round of applause for Trevor and Jenny. Thanks guys. This has been a really difficult toast for me to pull together because I feel like every wedding I've been to for a decade has made me think about Marty. Not, I'll say it hasn't always made me think about my lovely wife Betsy, but it always makes me think about Marty. It's what happens when you have this special person, this brother in your life that has meant so much to you. And these guys have done such a great job in going through all these things that are so meaningful. But there's something that makes Marty so special, and that is that he wrings every ounce of every moment out of every moment of life. Every single thing he can get, the potential, the fun, the excitement, it's what makes him infectious, and it's why we're all here. It's why he has this enormous crew from high school here, why he has these amazing friends from Bucknell, these friends from New York City, and all these amazing friends and family. So it's easy to, when you're wringing all the joy and energy out of life when things are going well. But there's a special story that I draw back to when things maybe had a little bit of adversity, some limitation. And I come back to our time playing hockey, formative years. Marty and I grew up playing hockey together. And let's just say that Marty in high school dealt with a pretty significant limitation, and that was puberty. And more specifically, the lack thereof. To put it in the context of hockey, let's just say that this guy had a laser of a slap shot. He'd fire away at the blue line and would almost make it to the goal. So come junior year, we're playing in our league playoffs. We're playing in the semifinal. We have an opportunity to win and go play for a league championship. Would have been the first in the program's young history. We're playing the best team in the league with the state's leading scorer, a guy named Tom Wesch. He was like 6'3", 6'4", like 7'5" on skates, about 220 pounds, monster. And Marty was tasked with marking him. So you think, God, physically, totally outclassed, skill-wise, even more so. But Marty rises to the occasion. Marty maximizes. He's a maximizer. And so how did he address it? Well, he decided that he was going to be the biggest son of a gun instigator in the history of New Jersey high school hockey. He was going to chirp. He was going to chip. He was going to get in this kid's head. First period goes by. No goals for Tom. Second period. No goals for Tom. Third period, minute left, no goals for Tom. First time all season this guy hasn't scored to this point, okay? All of a sudden, and at this point, it's 6-2. They get a great team. They're about to beat us. We're at the bench, and I see Tom wheel around, take his hand, and just slam Marty right in the head. Marty goes down. Tom jumps on him, starts throwing haymakers. And we're just dumbfounded. I mean, this kid's brain broke for this little itty-bitty Marty. We're worried for his health. We're worried for his well-being until the point at which he got up, skated back to the bench, smile ear to ear, because he knew that Tom was getting thrown out of the game and he was not scoring in his first goal of that season, that first game of that season. Now, the subplot to that story is he was kicked out for 2 games. One was a league championship, which they lost, and the other was a state tournament game, which they lost. So Marty, itty-bitty Marty, effectively ended this talented hockey player's high school hockey career. Unbelievable. Marty wrings every ounce of joy and excitement out of life. And tonight is the best example of that, because he hit the home run, the grand slam of all time with marrying Sarah. Sarah, this is not a perfect man. He has his limitations. You deal with the impatience. That's legendary amongst the Finsgraf clan. You deal with the stubbornness. You help rein him in. And most importantly, you keep Wayne at bay. We've heard about Wayne. From the very first moment that many of us met you and met the two of you in Newport, it was love at first sight for all of us, for you two. And if you recall, I uttered the immortal words, hey, listen, I don't know if this thing with you and Marty is going to go anywhere, but you're so cool, I would love to be a pen pal. And my admiration for you has grown each and every day. I thank you for making my best friend in the world so happy, so special, and such a better person. Congratulations. Let's raise a glass for these beautiful people. Thank you, guys. Thank everybody. We're going to cut the cake right now, so thanks so much.